Harriet Tubman, Life of a Slave Girl. The life of a slave girl was difficult. Born into a life of hardships, there seemed to be no escape from the harsh conditions they would face for the rest of their lives.
It was common for slave owners to sexually assault on women and for women to take care of their children, with the risk of being beaten, whipped, or put under any other kind of torture in case the baby cried, in case the baby got sick. Any slight mistake was severely punished. There were long routines. They had to do household work and then work on the fields. We cannot imagine the kind of conditions they were put through in many parts of the South.
Yes, the life of a slave girl was very hard. In fact, as soon as they were born, they were considered property. There's no real documentation about the day she was born, so they think that it's about 1825 because that's the closest year they can put together because they were considered property, kind of like cattle. At the age of 5 years old, Amarita Ross, which changed her name later to Harriet Tubman, was contracted out as a nurse, and she had to watch over children at the age of 5. And at 5 years old, she's watching an infant, and if the child cried at any time at that while she was watching them, she'd be beaten with a whip. So anytime a child cried, she would be beaten. So now she, according to AmericanLibraries.org, that's when she decided that she said, I'm not going to be a slave girl anymore, and that's when she started trying to get her freedom.
Tubman was separated from her sisters at a young age, but stayed close to her brothers throughout her time as a slave on the Brodie's plantation.
Tubman was whipped at every opportunity, forced to work both for the house and on the field. Punished just as irrationally on the fields, Tubman was treated cruelly with no discretion.
According to Christian Ortel, Harriet Tubman carried scars from her abuse at the hand of her masters. The scar that most profoundly shaped her life was the one on her head that marked the day a 2-pound heavy weight cracked her head.
The story behind that event was in her early teens when the fateful incident happened. As a slave that left the field without permission, the boss ordered him to be captured, and when the slave was captured, the boss threw a heavy weight toward the slave but hit Tubman instead. As a result, historian Katie Larson claimed that this injury changed the course of her life, not only through the physical disability it caused, but also because it sparked psychological changes that redefined the way Tubman viewed the world.
As a result of her head wound, Tubman suffered chronic seizures and narcolepsy. Her owner was never able to sell her off, and at one point she wasn't even worth 6 pence. Whether it was out of spite or just pure malice, Brodie lashed out by attempting to enslave more of her family members. At this point, Harriet knew that she could no longer remain a slave.
In 1849, Harriet Tubman's owner, Edward Brodie, was planning on selling some of his slaves in order to repay his debts. Harriet, formerly known as Minty, had heard rumors that her and her brothers were going to be sold to the South. In hopes of not being sold, Minty prayed all night that her master would change his mind. However, when her prayers did not work, she switched her prayers and prayed that the Lord would kill him instead if he did not have a change in heart. A week later, her master, Edward Brodie, had died. Minty felt extremely guilty, but his death played a big part in her escape. She was able to save up enough money to escape the Poplar Neck plantation with her brothers Harry and Ben.
Edward Brodie's death played a pivotal role in Harriet Tubman's life. It was at this point that she decided she was no longer going to live a life as a slave. She and her brothers escaped unnoticed. However, her brother, scared for his child's life, who still remained as a slave, made a conscious decision to return. To ensure her brother's safety, she returned them back to the plantation. Harriet then had the courage to escape on her own, and later became iconic in freeing hundreds of slaves through what's known today as the Underground Railroad.
Harriet Tubman's struggles as a slave fueled the fires for the passionate Civil War spy, revolutionary, and activist she would later become.
Harriet Tubman, Life of a Slave Girl.